Welcome back to One on One with Mr. Yu. I'm your host, of course, Mr. Yu. In studio today is Sean McManus, founder of McManus Strength and Nutrition. Brother, good to have you in the house today, man. How are you?
I'm good, my man. Glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Same here, brother. Glad to have you in here. All right, let's jump in. We had an awesome pre-interview chat, man. We talked about a lot of stuff. You got a wealth of information and knowledge and resources for the viewers and listening and tuning in. So I'm excited to get this chat going, man. So let's kind of start with where you grew up at, man. Kind of location wise and situation wise. How'd you grow up?
Yeah, bro, absolutely. So, grew up in the foothills of North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
We moved out to a small farm when I was about 10 or 11 years old. So, grew up on farm life. Absolutely loved it. Um, I was homeschooled from second grade on. So, homeschooled farm life, and it was awesome.
Okay. Why do you think your family chose homeschooling? It's really, really common. It's picking up steam a lot in today's time. But why was that you think they chose that back in your day?
Yeah, man. So it's definitely picking up steam, which I love to see. I think it's a huge thing. I think we as parents are responsible for our children's education, and I think homeschooling is the best way to do that. But so my parents, when I guess it was around second grade, is when we switched over to homeschool. But they wanted to be sure that they had control of our education, and they wanted to be
Okay.
sure that we came up with a Christ-centered education and Christ-centered background.
Okay. So is that what they saw that made them kind of gave them pause about the public system, or was there another factor that kind of led to that decision?
Yeah, man. So I think that they were very much ahead of their time. I think because I'm 31, so excuse my math,
Oscar.
20, 25 years ago, something like that.
Okay.
Um, so I think they saw where the public educational system was going in terms of, very much steering away from a Christian background, like the way that our nation was built up. And so they took it into their own hands and they decided that, God gave them these children to raise in accordance to his will and his plan. And, they jumped in both feet and went after it.
I like that. I like that. We had a long discussion. You got a lot of things that you kind of just shared as part of your story. You talked a lot about feeling unfulfilled and disconnected. And, I'm sure it's not gender related, but as a man, I really feel that that resonates with me because, I spent a good bit of my life feeling like I was busy doing things, had my hands, in a lot of different projects and ventures, but still walked away feeling like that. Tell me about where you were when you had those kind of feelings and how you kind of pushed through it, if you did push through it.
Yeah. So just like the feelings of unfulfillment.
Absolutely, being disconnected from your purpose, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple different pieces to there. I'll hit on the career piece first.
Okay.
So I spent about 8 years in the corporate world before I started my own business. And when I first got started, I first graduated college, it was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is a quote unquote grown up career. Um, so it was okay. Like it was okay with me for about a year or 2 years. And the more I was in it, the longer it was, we say unfulfilling. It wasn't challenging to me. So I was doing the same things day in and day out. And those things didn't interest me. And I didn't feel like I had enough control to even like move the needle in the right direction if I needed to. It was very much I'm an employee. I do what I'm told. I can do the bare minimum and still get by because I'm not going to make any more money, whether I'm like the particular position I was in. I'm not going to make any more money if I absolutely excel. And, or I'm not going to make any less money if I just do the bare minimum and get by. So that was kind of a hard pill for me to swallow. And because I grew up doing, I was raised to do the best that I could do in everything. And the longer I was in this position of it really doesn't matter because it doesn't affect you or your family if you do well. And it doesn't seem to affect the company very
Hmm.
well if you do well versus like if you just kind of, half rear end it and move on. So I noticed myself falling more and more into that. The longer I was there, I became more and more complacent and more like, I'll just do the bare minimum because why does it matter anyway?
Yeah.
Um, So that was very unfulfilling. And then
I
the
want to
other
ask you about
piece of
that,
that,
Sean.
yeah, hit it.
Yeah, I want to jump into that real quick before you move on to your next part, your next piece. I know it's really gonna be good, so I'll hold that thought. But I was in that same spot with the corporate world. I mean, I spent close to a decade doing stuff with the government, and I know it's the epitome of a stable job, but there's just so many things that people don't talk about that it costs you to do that. Why do you think so many people embrace the corporate world to begin with? Why do you think that happens? I know it's common and it's easily accessible, I guess you could say, but why do you think people embrace it so much?
I think we've just been conditioned to believe that that's the only option. That's
Mm,
the safe option. When in reality, you look at it, and at any point in time, because you're not in charge, your boss is in charge. You could lose your job, and they don't really
absolutely,
have to have a reason to fire you.
absolutely. That's the same thing that they hit the mark right off. Yeah. So go ahead and jump to your next point, Sean. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. So the other piece of the unfulfillment is more related to personal and family. Um, I had for a while, I had some nice guy tendencies, and by nice guy, I mean I was never really the guy that just get walked on all the time,
Yeah.
but I was also, I don't want to say agreeable, because it's not that I'm trying to not be agreeable, but I just didn't. I knew where I stood on some stuff, but I wasn't as firm on other things. And
Non-confrontational, maybe something like that.
non-confrontational. I think that's probably a good way to put it. I shied away from confrontation, and I could tell that something inside of me desired more, and so I didn't really know what that was, but I started to search for it. And at this point in time, we had just had our first child. I was still in this job that I didn't feel great about. I knew I was supposed to be doing something else, but I just didn't know what the heck it was. Um, my marriage wasn't doing great. It wasn't like we were getting ready to get divorced, but it was just very, it's okay.
Yeah.
So I started kind of seeking out, like, I was like, what am I missing? I'm missing something. And so I was listening to podcasts, I was reading books, um, and I got connected with this guy and ended up joining his mastermind. Now, his mastermind is for Christian men, Christian fathers and
Okay.
husbands,
Okay.
that teaches them how to lead their families better. So I dive into this, and then my eyes get opened up to the world of, hey, you're a man. In God's word, it tells you that you were designed to lead. You don't need permission from anyone to lead, because God has already given you that authority. And I started learning about this stuff, and I'm like my mind was blown. I'm like, okay, all these feelings of unfulfillment, all these feelings of, like, why do I just have to sit on the back burner, were all legit, because God put this desire to lead inside of me. And so it was like, when I joined this mastermind and I started learning, it was like, oh, this is good. I'm supposed to be feeling this way. So I was able to really kind of step into that leadership position for myself and for my family. So that's kind of like a little bit all over the place of where I kind of went with the unfulfillment.
That's good. I can totally relate. We had a good conversation. It was some of it was funny, but some of it wasn't so funny. But what's your view of men in today's society? What opportunities do you see there? Because we had a good talk about that, and it's definitely a present conversation. It's really hard to not get into this. And before you answer this, go ahead and shout out our Stephen. He dropped a comment. Good to see you all, and thank you, Stephen. Thanks for listening, brother. And if you have any questions you have for Sean, any comments there, love to hear more from you here. But go ahead, Sean. Go ahead and jump in with that answer there. What's your view of men in today's society and opportunity you may see?
Okay, so we might roll some heads here. I know you and I talked about this a little bit, and that's okay.
I do this all the
Um,
time in this show. It doesn't bother me. Proceed,
all
sir.
right. So just like hearing that question, what do I think of men in today's society? I think men are passive and weak for the most part.
Okay. Why?
Um, I think men jump into jobs, jump into careers, jump into families. They pursue comfort. They don't pursue
Hmm.
growth. And I don't
Wow.
necessarily blame them for that, because as men in our society, whether that's in church, whether that's in culture, we've been conditioned to think that that's what we're supposed to do.
Hmm.
Um, So I talked to a lot of guys about this, and even in most churches nowadays, as men, we aren't taught how to be men. We aren't
It's fair.
taught that masculinity is important, that the difference between men and women is important, that God created us a certain way for specific reasons, and that God created women a certain way for specific reasons. So we're afraid to step on each other's toes. We're afraid to offend one another. So what that means is we kind of get in our little corners. We go to our quote unquote comfy job that we're okay with, even though we really don't like it on the inside, but it's safe. Um, we come home, we barely look at our wife. We kind of brush our kids off, or maybe we play with them, and that's great. We sit on the couch, we drink a beer, we call it a day, and we do it again tomorrow.
Wow, that's actually happening.
Yep.
Yeah. You mentioned several things in regards to Christian values and the wisdom surrounding that. As a farmer, how does let me rephrase. The Bible uses a lot of agricultural language. I mean, from end to end, it speaks to that. What's the biggest lesson you learn through Scripture that speaks to you, or that speaks to the farmer part of you? What kind of a lesson do you have that, or takeaway that you got that speaks to that part of who you are?
Yeah. So the first one that comes to mind is those who don't work shouldn't eat. Um,
Wow,
and that comes,
that's farming life right there. if you
yeah,
don't
yeah,
if you don't grow, you don't eat. It's a real
exactly.
thing.
So yeah, that
Wow.
that really comes to mind because you know if there farming taught me a lot of things, but if there's one thing that farming teaches you, it's how to work and how to work hard. Um, because there's a lot of long hours, there's a lot of very labor intensive work, um, but it's good work. It allows you to use your physical body. It allows you to get your hands dirty. It allows you to build things. It allows you to problem solve, and that just speaks to a man's soul in a lot of ways. And I think that's what's kind of connected me with it so much. And, it's something that I do want to get back to in the future. Um, but not only do you get to do that type of work that speaks to your soul, it's a very simple lifestyle. It's very much we're in the here and now. This is the problem we have to fix right now. Like this is the season that we're in. Whether it's planting season, whether it's harvest season, whether it's maintenance, anything like that.
Yeah.
Um, but the other piece to that is you get to be in God's creation all day long. You get to be outside looking at the beauty that He's created all day long, and there's no other way to get, in my mind, to get any closer to Him than to spend time in His creation.
I like that, man. That's really good. What's your longest farming day you can recall?
Oh
The
gosh,
longest day
bro.
you spent? I mean, how many
they
hours?
they run together sometimes.
You ever hit
It was
20 hours of farming in
probably
a day?
probably at some
Wow.
point in time. There was some, definitely some 16 hours that I can recall, but yeah,
Oh yeah.
there's it's just you just do what
Wow.
has to be done when it has to be done.
Yeah. Well, we talked a lot about leadership too, and I want to definitely get into some of that stuff and then get into some of your work with physical fitness. I meet mentors and leaders and coaches everywhere. Really, I'm meeting them more in greater volume than ever because they're everywhere now. But what do you, in your opinion, Sean, what do you think legitimizes leadership in a person? If that makes sense.
No, it does. Somebody that's walked the walk. Somebody
Okay.
that's
Flesh that out for me.
somebody that's already accomplished the thing that you're after. So whether that's physical fitness, you know, let's just take physical fitness for example.
Okay.
Um, I don't mean any offense to anybody, but I will not hire a fat trainer. Like I'm not doing it. Like how are you going to tell me how to be in shape if you can't keep yourself in shape? Kind of
They
the
are
same
fat,
thing.
they are hefty trainers out here.
Yes, there are.
I, I'm I don't know how. Okay, go ahead. Keep going, Sean.
But
I'm
that's
gonna take
just
it
the
to where you
super
talk.
yeah, that's just the super simple example. The other thing is, we've hit on some family leadership here. So I am not going to take advice from someone who does not have the life that I want.
Okay.
Meaning, if somebody is counseling me on family leadership, on leading my family well, they better be doing a damn good job already.
That's fair.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And love the comments, Steven. That's essentially what Sean is talking about. That's good
Yep.
stuff right there. Yeah. The idea of leading ourselves well is seems to be a lost art. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who is kind of struggling with that? They don't recognize their part in the process. A lot of finger pointing that goes on. We all know somebody who lives like that. What's your advice to somebody who's struggling to live well? What would you say to them? How would you speak to them?
So the first thing that I would say is, one of the main qualities of a leader is taking responsibility. So
Okay.
taking responsibility for yourself, taking responsibility for your actions, taking responsibility of the outcomes. Um, you cannot lead anyone well until you take responsibility for yourself. So we get into a little bit of that hypocrisy thing where we've all had either a boss or a friend or a coworker at some point in time that tries to quote unquote lead, tries to tell you what to do, tries to maybe boss you around. And you know that they're not qualified to do so. And so you know that they're not doing the things that they're telling you to do. And therefore, it unqualifies them as a leader. So until you take control of you start leading yourself well, you are unqualified to lead others.
No, that makes total sense. We talked a lot about family. It's important to both of us. So it dominated a good bit of our conversation. But when was the point where you realized that, you know what, my devotion to my family needed to kind of take a step up, if you will? When did you figure that out? Exactly at what point did you figure that out?
Hmm. When I figured out that I was responsible for the outcomes in my family.
Was there a singular situation that kind of highlighted that you can share? Was there something that kind of said, you know what, this is my aha moment. I got to get this straight.
It was probably when I joined the mastermind that I was telling you about earlier.
Okay. Okay.
I started learning about what it looks like to lead well, in a practical sense and also from a biblical perspective. Um, just it really opened my eyes to like, okay, if I want my family to thrive, if I want to have a loving marriage with my wife, if I want to raise children that are valuable members of society, but not only are they valuable members of society, but they're devoted to Christ because that's my job as their dad. I'm a Christian, and it's my job
Right.
to make sure that they, as best that I can, that I teach them the ways of Christ. So when I started to realize that I was responsible for all of those things, it was like, okay, there's no more coasting allowed. I can control as much as I can on whether or not I have a loving marriage because I can control me. Now I can't control my spouse, but I can control me. I can control how I respond to her. I can control how I respond to situations. I can control how I respond to my kids. All of that is within my control.
Absolutely.
So that's when it was like okay, I want my kids to thrive. I want my wife to thrive. And in order for me to do that, I've got to level up big time.
Love that. I want to get into some of the work you're doing with strength and nutrition, but I want to ask you a question first. We talk a lot about men's issues. I think I do that a good bit on a couple of my shows, not because it's about gender or anything, just because it's what I can speak to. It's what's relatable to me. And since it's my show, I talk about things that I understand
Yes, right.
and, and things that I've done wrong. It's not an attack against anybody else or not to leave anybody out. But what's one thing that you think men should talk about more, but we don't?
Ooh, dude, we could talk for an hour about this.
No,
Um,
just 30 minutes is good.
Man, men don't talk to each other enough about anything. They don't talk to each other enough about their struggles. They don't talk to each other enough about their wins. The men that I talk to are most of the time very hard on themselves. They
Hmm.
feel the weight of leadership, but they don't know what to do with it. So most men that I know want to do well for their families. Like they genuinely want to, they just don't know how. So
Wow.
there's that piece of it. There's the struggles. There's the struggles that we have as men. Um, whether that be with vices, whether that be with pornography, whether that be with, negative self-talk, because a lot of guys don't speak to themselves well. Um, and another thing that guys don't talk about is sex. How do we?
You would think that's the opposite.
You would think so.
If
Now,
you
now
if you
I say that in a way of like not this, false bravado bragging about how many women you slept with, because I don't care about any of that. I think that's disgusting. But how do we become better men? How do we lead our families and our wives better to cultivate a marriage and a relationship where that is frequent? Because most guys are not having near the amount of sex that they want to have with their wives. They get married and that goes down the toilet.
definitely, you talked a lot about rebuilding self confidence, and I definitely would love to hear how you would go about addressing that, because the kind of confidence that you just got finished mentioning, that's what we hear about the most. The one that the confidence in the bedroom, or what's perceived to be something that happens in the bedroom. But this is major for you about rebuilding self confidence. Why is that? Why is that a big deal for you? Why is that important for you?
So, like I was talking about before, most guys don't talk to themselves well, um, meaning they're very self-degrading at times, meaning they're very hard on themselves, um, things of that nature. So, in the rebuilding self-confidence piece, the first thing that I'm going to go to is I'm a Christian. So, my identity is in Christ. So, that's where I need to draw my confidence from, in the man that he made me, in the man that he is. So, that's number one. Now, the practical side of that is, in order to build confidence in yourself, you have to keep the promises that you make to yourself. Because what you're doing by keeping the promises that you make to yourself is convincing yourself that you can trust yourself. Does that make sense?
Okay, it does make sense. It makes sense to me.
So the way
Mhm.
the way that we start with that, like super practical, is we start really small. So if a guy comes to me for fitness advice, oh gosh, I'm sorry, my legs are cramping. I did a leg workout this morning and it was killer. Um, But if a guy comes to me for fitness advice and he's like, hasn't worked out, and maybe he's never worked out before, maybe he has no idea what he's doing, that's fine. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to pick a very, very, very small thing for him to do. And I'm going to
Okay.
tell him to nail that for a week to 2 weeks. Okay. It's an easy win. We need to start stacking wins. This
Yeah,
guy doesn't feel
absolutely.
like he's winning. So we start small. We get this win knocked out. Okay. We've covered that. We've kept that promise that we made to ourselves that we're going to execute this thing. Let's say, for instance, we're going to drink this much water every day. That's where we're going to start.
Yeah.
So we execute that thing. We hit it every day. He's built up the confidence. Oh, it's a little bit of confidence. He's like, hey, I said that I was going to do this. I did this. Awesome,
Yeah.
great work.
It
Now
helps.
we're gonna add the next little piece, and we're just going to keep stacking wins on top of wins on top of wins until staying fit, making healthy choices, is something that's become a part of his life, versus I have to jump into the gym right now, and then he gets burnt out in a week, and we fall back off, and we're back to where we
Right.
started.
Yeah, that makes sense. And good shout out to Honest Christian Conversations. Our friend Anna is an amazing podcaster. She has some exciting content coming up. She's going to have you on her show. So she's shouting her out. Thanks, Anna, for jumping in. And thanks for listening. Appreciate you so much. All right, let's talk about McManus Strength and Nutrition. Why did you start this incredible project?
Oh man, so fitness has been a big part of my life. For most of my life, but I really got
Okay.
serious about it probably about a decade ago. Um, I had some pretty serious goals. I started doing some competitions, and really enjoyed like learning what my body was capable of and how I could change it with how I fed it and how I worked out and things like that. Um, so anyway, I've pursued physical fitness in some way, shape, or form pretty seriously for about the last decade. And naturally, what comes with that is, I've got guys that are like, hey, some friends are like, hey, you look good, you're strong. Like, I want to be that way. What do I do? So I just started helping some buddies.
Mm.
It's like, okay, this is what we do. This is where we start. This is what you need to eat. Things of that nature. Um, so started doing that a little bit. Picked up. a couple of clients. I was like, all right, maybe I want to try to do this and try to make some money. So same thing there. Picked up just a couple of guys. I was doing it very, very part time. Just helping some friends and charging them a little bit of money. And during this time period, I was still very much trying to figure out what I was supposed to do career wise or
Okay.
job wise.
Yeah.
Um, I was still very, very unfulfilled at the time. I think when I started, I was actually still in my corporate job.
Oh, okay.
Um, so when I was doing it, then I was still in the corporate job. I was still trying to figure out the next step. And I was just, I was a lot of praying, a lot of digging into scripture, a lot of asking God, like, okay, God, I know, like, I'm
Help.
very, yeah, exactly, help. Like, I am
Help.
discontent. I am not happy where I am. I know you've got more for me. I just don't know what it is. Um, so through a lot of that and through, just crying out to him, it was like, I felt him kind of tug at me and he was like, I need you to make my men strong again. And I was like, okay, that feels like a tall ask. Um, so that's when I
They
started
always
diving
are.
more. Yeah, exactly. That's when I started diving into more of, doing this as a business versus just kind of doing it a little bit here and there.
And how many years has it been?
Full time,
Yeah.
full time. It's been a little over 6 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
You
still,
brand new, fresh out of the box,
still,
basically.
still
All
very
right.
fresh. Yep, yep.
So, I mean, I know that with any business, there's a time where you're in the red, and then you get to the black. So, how does it feel right now to have your own business and you're fully responsible for this, and you're kind of this is you. This is an extension of you, and this is your baby now. So, how's that feel to have that this new venture, and it's kind of all on you? You feel
Okay.
overwhelmed, or do you just kind of feel like how you feeling?
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit to answer this question well.
Okay.
So I left my corporate job of 8 years,
Mhm.
and it's been probably a year and a half ago.
Okay.
So, and I'll just wrap this up quickly. But
Yeah.
when I found out my wife was pregnant with our second child. Um, I knew because we're a single income household. My wife stays at home and watches over the kiddos. Um, I knew at that time that I was going to have to find something else because we were already not, struggling financially, but I wasn't
Yeah.
making enough money. Um, so I started looking at that point. I left my corporate job for a door-to-door sales position with a solar company,
Oh
um,
my goodness.
which to most people sounded absolutely insane. It was insane. It was insane to me also. Um, but it was a 100% commission job. And this company was like, look, if you work, like you'll make 10K a month in no time. And I'm like, I can learn, I can work. Like you ain't got to worry about that.
Sounds easy.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, jumped into that. Absolutely hated it. I was actually pretty good, but uh, I was not making the money they said I was going to make. Um,
Surprise.
yeah, shocker, real shocker, right?
Yeah, I'm shocked.
They sold me the job. Um, but anyway, so moved on from that. After about 3 or 4 months, I had been doing home repair work, so handyman style work. Growing up on the farm, I learned how to work with my hands. So I was helping people, fix stuff on their house. And so after I left the solar company, I was doing the home repair work and then I was doing the training. So I was doing both, and
Okay.
both were new businesses, both were fresh. So I was very much having to grow both of them. And it just got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm spending all this time and money on this home repair work, trying to grow it when I don't want the business to grow because I don't want to keep doing this anyway. So at that point, it was like, okay, I might as well take that time and that energy and push it into the training and the coaching because that's what I actually want to do. So that's when I stepped away from that about 6 or 7 months ago
You went
and then
all
started
in.
more
No, that's
coaching full
good
time.
though.
Yeah.
That's that's uh that's entrepreneur, man.
But to answer
That's
your
it, man.
question about how it feels when I first started out, full time entrepreneur, um, I went through a period of depression for probably about 3 or 4 months
Wow. Okay, that's honest.
because I was just, I had somebody tell me what my schedule was for the last decade of my life, and so I knew it was all on me, and I had no idea what in the world I was supposed to be doing. And
Mm.
it's not like when business first starts, it's not like the phones are ringing off the hook. You're
No, that's
basically
not how it works.
sitting there twiddling your thumbs, like, how do I get people to pay me for something? Um, so that was hard. Like there was about 3 to 4 months there where I was not in a good place, and it showed on me, it showed on my family. But thankfully, I tried to really rely on Christ, and I had some godly men around me that helped pull me out of that. And
My next question. Okay.
yeah, we
Yeah,
just
the
kept taking
community.
action and moving forward. Yep, yep.
Yeah, I mean, as men, and I hope men will be honest about this and admit it, especially if you're going to leave comments on this episode. At least be honest. We deal with isolation a lot, and for some reason, it seems to be the default for most of us. I'm glad you had a community. That was my next question to you. Okay, how did you handle it? Do you have a community to back you up? A lot of us are not thinking like that, and we need to. You're a great example of that, man. So thanks for sharing that. I want to get into a little bit more about your fitness work. Tell me this: in today's time, with all that we're seeing now, with all of the, I guess for lack of a better word, I just call them revelations. I don't know what else to call them. Where all these things are coming out. Okay, this is bad. You mean all these years we've been putting this inside of us, and it's bad now? So these are what's happening almost on a weekly basis. A new revelation is emerging that this stuff that we've been eating for 40, 50 years, in my case, more than 50, is not good for us all of a sudden. How is this affecting your business positively, negatively, or not at all? How are these revelations affecting your business?
Yeah, so I have a very simple philosophy when it comes to nutrition. If you eat it the way God made it, we're good to go.
Okay. Flesh it out, baby.
So
You got to break it down.
yeah.
Break
So
it down.
we want to get the primary source of our nutrition from whole foods. So that's chicken, that's beef, that's eggs, that's potatoes, that's rice, that's whatever, however you want to put it, the vegetables. The biggest thing that you run into, the biggest problem that you run into with nutrition is when it's ultra processed. So your potato chips, your little Debbie cakes, some kind of mystery meat that you bought from the back shelf of the grocery store. I can't believe it's not meat. I can't believe it's not butter. Like those things aren't great. If a scientist made it in a lab, the odds of it being better for you than how God created it in the first place are zero.
I'm transparent about this, but my mother, she's part of this. She watches this episode. She'll probably be like, "Why are you telling everybody that?" But I grew up on chips, so at this point in time, I'm kind of on a quest for a healthy chip. Scientifically, they said that the crunch matters, so I need to have the crunch. Yes. I don't want to eat the trash. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to eat.
Yeah.
I won't name anything because I don't want to insult anybody, but most of the stuff out there is really trash. So I'm trying to find a healthy chip. If it has 3 ingredients in it, I'll probably have it downstairs in my cupboard. Yeah. So potatoes, salt, and hopefully nothing else crazy like some kind of weird oil. But
that's right.
That's what I'm shooting
what I tell my clients too, man, is it's okay to eat that kind of stuff occasionally, but that should not be your primary source of nutrition. Like, we don't have to get on this super strict, I can only eat kale and, a horrible boiled chicken breast for the rest of my life. Like, no, thank you. I don't want any part of that.
Never help anybody.
No. But man, just understanding that, like, you need to eat whole foods the majority of the time. And if you're doing that, go get you a bag of chips every now and then. Like, it ain't going to kill you. It's okay.
You might be the best physical trainer in the whole world. Hope you get a whole bunch of clients from this episode.
Me too, bro. Me too.
That'd be great. That'd be great. That's great. So, we run out of time already. That's crazy. All right. So, I don't know if you've seen any of our videos on our YouTube channel. I hope you get a chance to check them out. I want you to just see what we're trying to accomplish. But we don't have a big home and a big yard, but we're trying to grow. For the past 9 years now, I guess we've been trying to grow our own stuff.
Nice.
Definitely vegetables. The fruit is a new venture. The pests that come in are like our mortal enemies because they want to destroy everything that we make. But vegetables have been we've been doing vegetables consistently for about 8 years. So we hardly ever hit the produce section unless you want to have something that we can seed out. But what's your stance on growing your own food? Is that part of your program? Is it something you're thinking about integrating into it, or not right now?
Yeah, man. So I'm glad you brought it up. That's part of my bigger vision. So starting this thing off is it's right now it's just strength and nutrition coaching. What I want to move into is getting back to more of my farming roots in the future,
Oh
and
yeah,
what I want to do is to be able to not only coach guys in strength and nutrition, but also be able to supply them with a homegrown, um, you know, nutrition that comes from my farm versus a commercial operation. So that is part of my end goal.
yeah, absolutely. Great comment by Stephen. Good wisdom, not demonizing everything, but we ought to be wise with what we pick. Let's not pretend that all food is good. Yeah, all food is not even
Absolutely.
food. We have this is a new thing. Well, I say new because we're really trying to really buckle down and be consistent about it. But I've always been a label reader, but you know, not to this degree. This is a whole new level of label reader now for me. So
Oh
if
yeah,
it has like 7, 10 ingredients in it, I'm already skeptical of it. I'm like, wow, that's a lot. You know what I'm saying? There's a
yes,
certain chicken sandwich out here that everybody loves. It has like 60 ingredients. I'm like, that's not good. It can't be.
that's
It
right.
should just be chicken and seasoning. It should. It
Yep.
should. Why do we need the other stuff? So this another story. I don't want to go there. Got a lot of friends that like worship this place, and I want to go there. But
Yep.
we hit a term, and I'm gonna ask you just a few more questions, and we'll go ahead and let's get out of here. But we talk about the term of we hear about the body is a temple. I heard that all my entire life. But there's a line that gets kind of blurry between self-worship and idolatry. How do you balance that with kind of help somebody get fit and be healthy, but not get to the point where they go into that route? Not because you can control it. You can't control what somebody else does, but because of your belief system, you have to be thinking about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. So I struggle with that a little bit.
Okay.
First, like the first part of my journey, it got to the point when I really got serious. Like everything came after the gym for me. Like my gym and my food was top priority, number one. Nothing else mattered to a degree. So, and if you're competing, like if this is your life, if this is what you do, it has to be that way to a degree because it takes up so much of your life. Now, the way that I combat that now is whatever you're doing, you should be doing for the glory of God. So if it gets to the point to where you're doing this just to glorify yourself or just to bring accolades to yourself, you've gone a little bit too far. Now, that is a fine line. It's like you talked about. That's a fine line to walk, especially when you get serious and you start seeing some real results.
Yeah.
Um, I have this picture in my mind of what my ideal body looks like. I'm not there yet. I don't know if I'll ever be there because I don't
Okay.
know if I will take the compounds necessary to get to the place that I feel like I
The
should be in my
compound.
mind.
What are
but
we talking about here?
yeah, yeah. But no, man, it's just about like my primary thing with guys and the guys that I work with is let's get you to the point that where you're showing up better for yourself, you're showing up better for your family, you're taking care of the body that God gave you. If you want to pursue it more than that, that's fine. That's okay. I want you to have energy to play with your kids. I want you to feel confident to take your shirt off in front of your wife. I want you to be physically capable of whatever God calls you to do.
I
Those are
love
the
it.
three. Those are the three biggest things that I'm after. I want you to feel good about yourself. I want you to have the energy to play with your kids. I want you to feel confident in your skin around your wife, and I want you to be physically capable of the body of doing whatever God calls you to do.
I love that. Only got three more questions for you, Sean. Now, one, it's funny, but I still have to ask this. Are you able to help somebody who does not have a gym membership?
Yeah, for sure. I actually have a client right now. We've done at-home workouts the entire time he's been with me.
Can you explain a little bit about what those at-home workouts entail? Is there necessary purchase that have to be made, or is it just are we just using household items to work out? What can you explain what's actually happening? Just to
Yeah,
help us out.
Yeah, I can give you a brief overview. So, depending on what your goals are, and this is what I tell guys when I talk to them, is like depending on what your goals are, we can do whatever you're comfortable with. I prefer you being in a gym just because there's more equipment that we can utilize. If you have old injuries, there's more variety of options that we can use. Like if this specific machine or workout hurts, like we can pivot a little bit and do this because you have more options there. Now, for people that are like, I'm not going to a gym, no problem. We can do body weight stuff. We can do air squats. We can do jump squats. We can do push ups. Like there's 100 different variations of push ups. There's 100 different variations of squats. We can do cardio. Like if you want to, if your goal is just to be healthier, you can get that done at home.
Okay, that's good news. That's good news for a lot of folks. So the memberships are like people don't want to do that. And I understand why. Let's really get
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Now we had just a couple more questions. We had a little fun back and forth about this term that is so prevalent in our society: happy wife, happy life. I told you that we don't do that at this house. We do happy spouse, happy house at this house. That's what works for us. But share your views on that, because I know you have some personal things that kind of came up relating to that. Please share that if you can.
Yeah, man. So first of all, I love my wife dearly. It pleases me to make her happy. I want to see her happy. I want to see her thriving. Um,
She's not paying for this advertisement, right?
she's not paying, not that I know of. Not that she didn't tell me if she was. But on the flip side of that, my goal in this life is not to make her happy.
Okay.
My goal
You
in
did
this
that.
life is to serve Christ. My goal in this life is to do whatever He calls me to do. And my goal in this life is to take good care of my family. Sometimes she might not be happy about the decisions that I make in order to do those things. And that's okay.
Is there
I
an
will.
example you can give for those that are in a young marriage and have no idea what you're talking about? Is there an example you can give that's not too personal?
The one that comes to mind, a little bit, is when it comes to physical fitness. There are times where it's been time for me to go to the gym, and my wife wants me to stay home. She wants to hang out. She wants to watch a movie. Sometimes that's okay. Like no problem with that. Other times, I made a commitment to myself to be in the best shape that I can possible. Um, I made a commitment to them to be physically capable of protecting them. I made a commitment to them to show discipline because that's a value that I hold in high regard. And that's a value that I want my wife and my kids to see me have. So, she may not be happy that I decide to go to the gym because that's part of me keeping a promise that I made for myself. And that's part of me making sure that I remain physically capable of protecting them and leading them and providing for them. So that's a kind of a small little example there.
Okay.
Um,
Is there
you
progress
know,
in that area now? Do you kind of see some changes in that area now?
oh yeah, yeah. There's times now where I might be whining a little bit. I might go, gosh, I don't want to go to the gym. She might go, you better. I'm like, okay, go.
Oh wow, she understands the
So
assignment.
yeah, she's there's been a lot of growth there on both of our parts. But it's just the way that I look at it is I have a responsibility to my family to lead them in the best way that I know how. God has given me that responsibility. So if there's something that I feel He needs me to do or something that I feel He wants me to do, my obligation is to Him before it is to my wife. So that's
Love
probably
it.
the best way that I know how to explain that.
I only have one final question for you. That's great, though. By the way, thank you for sharing that. One final question, but after this comment, the burden of leadership often feels heavy, but in fact, it is a great blessing to ourselves and those around us. Even more so if that burden is placed upon the shoulders of a good man. That is a mouthful, Stephen. But thank you for the comment. Good stuff by
Hey,
you,
bud.
sir. Thank you for participating and listening too, sir. Thank you. So we talked about. I'm going to ask you this question at the end. If you weren't in your current profession, I'm going to add woodworking to this. So if you weren't doing strength and conditioning and you weren't doing anything like farming or woodworking, or building furniture and any of that stuff, what would you think your focus would be at? What would you be doing?
Like career wise?
Yeah. Or vocation wise. I mean, whatever, how you want to phrase it, but what would you be doing? What would be your quote unquote passion? You're not farming, not doing nutrition, and you're not building anything. I'm taking all the good stuff away.
You are, man. What the world? No, I would probably go. So I would say I'm going to be a full-time cowboy, but if that's too close to farming.
Are you kidding me?
No, bro.
Is that a real thing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What do cowboys do? This is a legit question. I'm not being shady at all. What do they do?
Oh, man. So go out to somewhere like Montana, Wyoming, something like that, and where, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of acres, and you spend all day on horseback, and you might be branding cows, you might be working cows, you might be, checking fence, anything like that. So it's still farming, it's still ranching, it's to a degree.
Yeah, you snuck that one in. I
did. I snuck that one in, but if that is too close, I don't know, man. I would probably do something like military, police, or fire department.
Wow, that makes sense, man. I always ask that question because we leave so much stuff on the shelf as we grow up, as we get older. When we're younger, we almost see things a lot clearer.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do that, and we get older, and people talk us out of it. They say we can't do that, or it doesn't pay enough. My mom did it with me. There's something I wanted to do. I wanted to be an actor and be in the arts. She's like, ain't no real job. You should be an engineer. I'm like, wow. So, and I listened to her, so I didn't go that route. So that's why I asked that question. But Sean, fantastic time with you, brother. This was awesome. I hope everybody got some out of that. I want you to, if you don't mind, share where they can find your work. I'm gonna also have you go onto our YouTube channel in the comment section under the episode and put all your links in and everything, so they can find your work. Remember, you can go ahead and share it verbally right now, where they can find strength and nutrition and anything else that you're doing, man. Please share.
Yeah, for sure. So, guys, I'm on all socials. On X at the Sean McManus, on Instagram at the Sean McManus, on TikTok at the Sean McManus, and then on Facebook at Sean McManus. So you can reach out to me there. I check those things frequently. That's how I do my marketing, and that's how I reach out to folks. So, you guys send me a DM on any of those, and I'll get back to you soon. Would love to chat with you about what it would look like to work together, or just chat about any questions you had about today.
Sweet deal. And please, Sean, don't forget to drop that in the comment section in where you can find this episode, preferably the YouTube channel. We'll love your support over there as well, too. But yes, thanks for jumping in. We're gonna stay in touch, brother. This is not the end of us, so this is good. A lot more questions, a lot more stuff to chop up with you, man. But enjoy the combo. Thanks everybody for listening. Stephen, Anna, all the people who are commenting, thanks for jumping in and watching this episode today. Have a great day. Sean and I are going.